don't see your face.
I'm here. Oh, did I click the wrong button? Hold on a second. Here we go. Yeah, there I am.
Yes. Yay. Okay, good. All right, perfect. All right, ready? Three, two. Wait, is it George Kinder?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Three, two, one. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we're going to be talking about money and spirituality. Kind of a weird combination for most people, but it's a perfect combination that we're going to learn about from George Kinder and his book, 7 Stages of Money Maturity, Understanding the Spirit and Value of Money in Your Life. So welcome.
Thank you, CJ. Nice to be here.
So I found this very intriguing because these 7 stages are derived from Buddhism. So I was wondering if, just to start off, if you can talk about the 7 stages of money and how you even came up with this on your life path.
Mm. Well, the Buddhist roots are very deep, and maybe I should just define the different stages
Yeah.
rather than diving into them necessarily. But we can weave them through the conversation certainly. Um, so uh, there are 2 at the base that are I think of as childhood.
Hmm.
And they have to do with what I call innocence, which is
Hmm.
innocent messages, our belief systems that are naive by and large. And then the second layer of childhood is pain.
Hmm.
And so that's where we encounter difficult feelings around money. And then in adulthood, working our way through those structures of suffering, which is really what innocence and pain linked together create for us, are knowledge, understanding, and vigor. And knowledge has to do with knowing how money actually works in the world. It's the practical and pragmatic stuff, but it also has deep roots.
Hmm.
Understanding is the most profound area, and it's where we transform suffering into wisdom, really. And it has a lot to do with empathy and opening the heart
Hmm.
and being present. And that's the most meditative of all the areas. The third area of adulthood is vigor, and it's where we gain vitality. So, from a Buddhist standpoint, it's awakening, it's waking up.
Hmm.
And then the final stages are what I call awakening or maturity, and they are vision and aloha. And vision has to do with visionary action in the world. It's seeing what needs to be done in the world and having the adult skills to be able to deliver them. And then aloha, well, you've been to Hawaii, I'm sure.
Hmm.
You live on the West Coast. And aloha is really the passing of a blessing
Hmm.
from one person to another, regardless of economic difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's a deep spiritual thing, almost like shalom or namaste
Right.
in other cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came up with these 7 stages. You came up with these in your youth when you were traveling around Asia. Is that right? I mean, how did you tell me a little bit about your beginnings and how you moved from you're traveling around seeking, and then now into your financial piece.
Well, it was I was trapped like most people. I was really trapped in the world of money. I had I felt that my life was meant to be a spiritual life and
Hmm.
wildly creative.
Hmm.
And you know the old saying, do what you love and the money will follow. Well, CJ, I don't know how, but for me, it didn't work. And I couldn't find anybody to buy a single poem of mine, and nobody was willing to pay me for a meditation either. So I had to get to work and make some money. So it was feeling trapped by having to make money in the world, so to speak, but knowing that my essence was something richer and deeper. And so
Hmm.
how to bring those 2 together was my dilemma early in life, and that's really where the book came from.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now looking back at that time, what would you have said to your younger self?
Ah, just be true to yourself. Find what is your authenticity inside yourself and live it, and don't compromise.
Hmm. What's interesting is that you got into finance through your dad, who was an accountant, right? So you started off an accountant, you did tax accounting, and then you've actually merged, moved into financial planning. Um, and so during those times when you were doing financial planning, was there any part of you who was like, why am I not meditating? Or like, how did you deal with the tension between your spiritual life and no offense, I actually did accounting for probably 3 years of my life. It's the least creative thing I've ever done in my entire life. So how did you,
Yeah.
well, because that was your passion, right? To be wildly creative and then spiritual. So how did you navigate the two?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my dad was actually a lawyer,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry. I thought it was
it's
accounting.
basically like an accountant. So it's a um, I compartmentalized. I mean, I knew that I wanted to keep what was most passionate and most purposeful first in my life.
Hmm.
So I've meditated for 50 years, and I've meditated on average 2 to 3 hours a day.
Whoa, George, that's a lot.
That's a lot of meditation.
Wait, so do you do an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at night? How do you do 3 hours?
I do most of it in the morning. Most of it in the morning. I always do at least 2 hours in the morning. I mean, there's workshop days where things are running this way or
Right.
that way, and it's a little bit harder. But I get up early and I go right at it. So do a little bit of exercise, get alert, get some energy flowing, and then I go right to
Okay, I'm
meditation.
super impressed.
Yeah,
3 hours of meditation a day. That
yeah,
is
yeah.
practically monk-like. I don't know. I mean, frankly, it is practically monk-like because the
It-
monks have to do things like cook and farm and all these different things.
right.
Wow. Okay, so you kept your focus on your spiritual life and making sure that and you've been meditating throughout the last 50 years. And have you been like meditating 3 hours a day during that total 3 year period? Or I
Yeah.
mean 50-year
Two,
period?
2 to 3 hours a day, and there'll be periods. I mean, I'm sure that there were a few months
Oh
now and
yeah.
then where I hardly did any in some
Yeah,
way.
there's no audit involved. I'm not going to go back and like, now show me your records, George. Did you really 3 hours every day?
But there's no question the average is close to 3 hours a day for 50 years, and it's something I've grown to love more and more. I think when I was young, I saw it as almost like a macho kind of thing. Really,
Wow.
I want to get enlightened, right? And I
Yeah.
I want to do what those cool Zen monks did and have those experiences. But as I've grown, I've just come to love the practice. I feel that I
Mm.
learn something every day from it, and I feel that on most days I experience incredible jolts of kind of awakening. Basically, I don't know what else to call it, so
Interesting.
that I end up feeling very awake, very charged, very happy, and at the same time, we're very holistic. So, and kind of in touch with many things, more universal than just myself. So
Wow.
it's just wonderful. I just love it.
Can you give me an example? Because I'm just kind of curious. I'm a life coach, so I have those moments a lot. But that's
Yeah,
because I'm working with someone's deep spirit, and at that time, so I'm uncovering these like beautiful
yeah,
parts, almost like recovering people's souls, parts of their souls that have been missed along the way. And
right.
so it has that kind of awakened feeling because as people are awakening to their own sense of self, I have a kind of, I'm like writing along or I'm facilitating and I'm writing along. So I have that. But how does that work for you when you're working with someone's financial plan?
Well, keep in mind that I retired from financial planning not long after I wrote the Seven Stages book.
Okay.
That was 20 years ago.
Oh,
But
wow.
I still, what I do that's very related is that in fact, today I was on a group Zoom call with 6 financial advisors,
Hmm.
and I was coaching them on how to be present with their clients.
Hmm.
So I do a lot of
Wow.
coaching around that. Yeah.
Wow. So it's I would be hard pressed and when you were probably I'm imagining when you were 20 you wouldn't be like I'm going to somehow combine these two things together. It's pretty miraculous that you've been able to take something that is so structured and rigid and non-creative and create it and integrate it into your life. I mean, did it happen right away or did it take time to develop over time, that kind of
Yeah,
integration? Because you
very
compartmentalized it, but now it sounds like it's integrated.
right. Yeah, there's no question, and that's exactly what the process was. Was initially I had to keep them very separate because I felt that kind of yearning,
Hmm.
longing, guilt, humiliation from doing what I didn't love, what didn't feel true to me.
Oh,
I
wow, fascinating.
felt that. So I needed to keep them really separate so
Mm.
that I could tell myself whenever I was doing a tax return for somebody that I this afternoon or this morning, this is where I'm going to be. I'm staying true to that. I'm just finding a way to fund it. So
Mm.
do whatever I want. So in the early days, it was very separate, and the feelings were complex. It was very bipolar, if you will. It was
Hmm.
two minds going on there, and then over time, the meditation just deepens and softens,
Mm.
and makes you diminishes the self that is attached to feeling guilty, you know,
Mm.
to feeling shame.
Hmm.
And so it diminishes, keeps diminishing and diminishing and diminishing that self. And in the book, The Seven Stages, I know you saw the work in understanding where you learn to feel the feelings in a way that deepens you rather than harms you.
Mm.
So as that process developed, I think I became more at ease around all of it and just more capable of being present, whatever I was
Mm.
doing. And now I'm just happy whatever I do. So I don't know you know what to say. Uh,
Well, if you're mindful, it's interesting because I remember when my husband and I first had kids and we were splitting the household duties. Oh, it was just like mayhem. Who was doing the dishes? Who was doing the laundry? Who's cleaning up? And it was just like torturous. Like just, it was like this who gets, saddled with the thing we don't like doing.
right.
And over time, I think, I don't know if it just wears you down or a sense of mindfulness, or I just find myself doing the dishes. I'm not thinking about, did
Yeah.
my husband do the dishes? Am I doing the dishes? Am I doing the laundry? It's just kind
Yes.
of you just are doing the dishes.
Yeah.
And it's not as if I'm zoning in a different place. I'm just doing
Right.
the dishes. So I imagine that doing your taxes kind of falls into the same kind of flow to is that or like how a musician they practice scales over and over and
Hey,
over again and then it's like is it like
yeah.
that?
I was just sitting with my accountant today and wrestling with the tax return the way I used to do them years ago. And it's just like that. You're just present in the experience. And there's no avoiding it. There's no trying to get away. There's no wishing you were someplace else. You're there with someone who's lovely to be with, and you're there with a task to master in some way,
Hmm.
to do the best that you possibly can. So it's really it's a very Zen kind of thing. It's chop wood, carry water.
Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up the first segment of our show, tell me a little bit about so you have there are a lot of people out there. I have a group of people that I meet every Friday. About two-thirds of them work at Amazon, all as developers or, and they are they're exactly like where you and they're in their 20s and 30s or exactly where you were when you first started.
Yeah,
What
right,
advice would you give to them about, oh gosh, I like so I'll tell you a little bit about what they tell me, and
great.
I want to hear the voice of wisdom. So
Yeah,
one of my friends says, I'm going to work at Amazon where I can like tons and tons climb the corporate ladder, where I can tons and tons of money. I'm going to devote a certain percentage of my money to like kind of good, worthy, kind acts. he takes a certain percentage of his money and devotes it to a group that gives money to people who want to do spiritual retreats. Okay, so he does that, and then he's like, and then I'm going to quit my job at Amazon. I'm going to amass enough money. I'm going to quit my job at Amazon, and then I'm going to buy a tiny house. I'm going to live in the woods. Okay, so that's like one guy. The other guy is like, and all of them have decided not to have children because they are really just, they are on the path to enlightenment. So I have another friend who, not married, is kind of like same thing, developing, doing coding, making a lot of good money, but it's just like it's not in his soul's path. Like he said, like he sits through meetings, and because all of them have done so much meditation practice, they're actually not even listening in the meeting. They're just kind of like being present in the meeting, and they'll say like, John, what do you think? And John will be like, blah, 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 and come up with something completely profound because he's listening at some other level beyond like the day in, day out. So these are so what would you offer them as advice? So they're kind of struggling, they don't want to be where they're at. They're kind of planning for the future for someplace else to be.
Right. So uh, I have very radical thoughts, and
Okay.
yeah. So what I would do, what this work, the 7 stages of money maturity work, led to a movement that's called life planning. And in a life plan, what we do is we ask the 3 questions that you read about when you got to the knowledge section around goals. And at the base of that, at the third question, it's a life or death question. It's, if you only had 24 hours left to live because the doctor suddenly shocks you that you have this rare illness, and you reflect on your life, what did you miss?
Mm,
Who did you not get to be?
mm-hmm.
What did you not get to do? And what I'm hearing, CJ, I'm hearing a guy that longs to live in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm,
there, is really passionate about that.
mm,
I'd make sure he gets that right away. He,
mm,
he still has to work at Amazon, but I'd make sure he has a really good chunk of that right
mm,
now.
mm,
Because every moment that he is sacrificing, that both of these people are sacrificing to Amazon and not being present in those meetings and really just being distracted, that's a huge loss
mm-hmm.
of their potential development as human beings and their potential contribution to the world. The first guy is thinking, I'll contribute by giving all this money,
Mm-hmm.
right? All right. But the truth is that the more that he knows who living in the woods is, the more he's going to be able to contribute something extraordinary because it's
Mm,
what he's passionate about. It's what he cares about. It's where he knows wisdom lives.
yeah.
So I would just make sure he has a lot more of that, as much now as he possibly can get,
Mm,
and moving very rapidly toward that. And I'd forget about giving the money away.
mm,
I would really be focused on getting free.
mm.
It may be that the money comes back and says, "No, George, you're crazy. I got to give the money." So,
Right.
I'm just taking a slice from
Right.
your
Yeah. No.
present.
No. I know. And it's not, I'm not. They're all on the path of enlightenment. So I think if they were to do anything, it would be focusing on their own personal development and enlightenment. So, and that's what they're doing. In every moment that they're not working at Amazon, that is what they're doing. But I hear what you're saying, which is there may be other aspects aside from being enlightened. There's other aspects, and like, do it now. What are you waiting for? And I had a dad who, planned for his retirement. Got everything. Everything in your adult stage: knowledge, wisdom, understanding, vigor. He had all of those aspects, and then he died. He like died writing the book that he always wanted to write, like literally before the last chapter of the book was written. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, you can't like this is like the most tragic
Yeah.
movie ever.
Yes.
But, as a result, I'm right with you. Like live your life now. Don't wait.
I had many clients just like that, and many clients who said, I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to retire and I'm going to go live in the woods. They got to that point and they go, well, maybe I'll work a couple more years. And that couple of more years just kept getting to a couple more years, couple more years, couple more years. And they never became who they really longed to
Hmm. Hmm.
be.
Hmm.
And I think that's tragic.
Yeah, me
That is
too. Me
Yeah.
too. Okay, well, let's talk about I want to actually go into um, talking about your vision. You have a vision, and it's about people's freedom. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your mission. Um, why the word freedom, and what do you mean by that word?
Yeah, I think, um, I've been asked that question recently a fair amount. Why the word freedom? Some people say, don't you mean happiness? And happiness is related to it. But I think when I was doing tax returns, I wanted to be free. It wasn't about happiness. I wanted to be free. Now, what did that mean? I don't know. I don't know if that came from democracy, if it came from Zen, awakening is freedom. It's not happiness so much. Or did it can't come from feeling trapped?
Mm,
So many people in the world feel trapped. They feel trapped by money. They feel trapped in marriages. They feel trapped by politics, by the political. So many people aren't living lives of freedom. They feel trapped because they can't even find a job.
hmm
So the word freedom means a lot, I think, for a lot of people. It meant a lot to me.
hmm
So I love it. And when I'm in my day when I'm walking around the yard or whatever, I have a cabin, a writer's cabin that I work in, and it's about 100 yards walk from
hmm
where I live,
Nice.
and yeah, it's wonderful, and that walk is my path. People
Mm,
often ask, "What's your path?" Well, that's my path, and
mm.
I walk it, and there's water on either side. It's a peninsula that's going out into a
Oh, fantastic.
pond, a small lake, and it's like, wow, this is freedom. This is freedom.
Mm.
So I don't know if people can relate to it, but I think that happiness is close.
Yeah,
It's
it sounds like a sense of presence. Like you're completely, as I'm watching, I was visualizing you walking along that like little narrow strip and
yeah,
just being completely present in your surroundings and I think of freedom from a spiritual standpoint. So it's, finding your truest essence, your
beautiful.
highest spirit or whatever it is. And so when you're free and you're not societally confined with what you should do, what it should like all the things that you talk about and that in your innocence and pain section, when you're
Mm.
free of those things, you can just be your natural state of being, whatever that is. But I wasn't sure what you meant by freedom. So
Yeah.
how does that desire, so if you take that walk along to your cabin,
Yeah.
how does that relate to what you're trying to do for people, and how does that relate to finance? That seems like very unrelated in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Meditating, your 3 hours of meditating that you told me about before, I get how that's related. But how is the financial plan related?
yeah. So let me back up just a bit, build context, and come back and
Yes.
deliver right on that point, I think. You were asking for a moment there, what is freedom? What does it mean to me, and why freedom? And as you know, I've Seven Stages was my first book. I've
hmm
written a bunch of books. All of them to me are about freedom, and
hmm
and the latest, which we won't talk about this time, but maybe we'll have
Yeah,
another
we'll talk about
another
next time.
conversation
Yeah.
sometime, is about civilization, democracy, leadership, about what's happening in the world, a planet, all of those things. And it's about bringing freedoms, economic and democratic freedoms, everywhere to
mm
everyone. And
mm
it also is very rooted in mindfulness. So there's a lot of mindfulness in it as well.
hmm
A lot of that work that I'm doing now comes out of this life planning movement, comes out of the seven stages,
mm
and out of this drive for freedom. So when I think about freedom in terms of a financial advisor, because they're the ones I've trained, and now these 3,000 advisors are working all over the world to bring their clients to their dreams of freedom.
Right. So you have 30 countries, 3,000 accountants who are actually doing this life planning process, and that you've trained with the process that's actually identified in this book. Okay, sorry.
Financial planners.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
told me, but I don't think of the other. We talked
No,
about
we
that earlier.
mentioned
Yeah, yeah,
financial planners all over the world.
yeah.
And so the way that I understand it, that we understand it, is that the whole purpose of money is to bring freedom into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's to deliver us
Mm-hmm.
so that we can maximize who we're meant to be, our
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, our love, our kindness, our passionate exploration, our entrepreneurial endeavor, to maximize whoever it is that we're meant to be, our creativity, our spiritual depth, and 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 the beauty of what we've done, what we've crafted in this movement, and it starts in the Seven Stages book,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's unique for everybody. It's like you and I can share, we can look each other in the eyes and we know what we're talking about when we're talking about meditation and the depth of that meditation. Not everybody meditates,
Mm-hmm.
but they have their own way of finding their authenticity
Mm-hmm.
and of finding their truth and of finding their compassion and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we have a program, and it's in the knowledge chapter of the seven stages.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that program looks at, it tries to help you vision what the absolutely ideal life would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I suggested for your friend at Amazon, he's not living it at Amazon. And
Right.
so let's make it happen as quickly as we can. Let's challenge him. Maybe it's 2 years away. Maybe we can't give it to him right away. But we say, hey, if we could give this to you in 2 years, how would that be?
Mm-hmm.
And he'd probably go, wow, that'd be incredible. 2 years instead of 20, that'd be fantastic. And that's what we try to do. We try to build that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mix of excitement and anxiety. You know how close those feelings are. They're
Mm-hmm.
close. And so we try to deliver something that they've painted to us without them even thinking about it. Because
Mm-hmm.
they 20 years out, or it's never going to happen, or do a little bit on vacation, and we just put it all in an image.
Mm. It's interesting because 20 it's probably about 20 years ago. So when our kids are first born, I had left Microsoft, and I was trying to figure out what we were gonna do next, and I didn't know, and so I met with a career coach, a psychotherapist who did career coaching. Like she branded herself career coaching, and the question that she asked is, "What would your ideal day be like?" And so my husband and I, we still remember this conversation, even though it was a long time ago, 20 years ago. We were walking along and we described what our ideal day would be. And literally, he turned to me, he's like, "Do you realize that we are living that life now?" And I was like,
Beautiful.
"Yeah." Yeah, because we were very deliberate. We said, what I really would like to do is have like a few hours reading, meditating, doing something that I think is meaningful. So the radio show is one of the things that I do as my way of giving back because I enjoy doing it and it
Mm.
gives back. It's kind of like you said for finance, your financial stuff. It just feels like, it's probably one of the nicest ways that you can share your talents with other people and help them become free, right?
Right.
But yeah, we had that same
Wow.
exercise that was 20 years ago, and he's like, "Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it, that we're actually living that life now?"
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. So I think it's about being very deliberate and then having the discipline and rigor that you call it vigor to make sure that you have the discipline to execute on those things. It makes the difference and
That's,
being clear
yeah.
all the time. It's not just like 20 years ago we had that vision and all of a sudden it happened. Like
Right.
my husband and I take walks twice a week and we talk about our lives and we talk about our goals and our plans, like not every time but like throughout the year we're talking several different times about
Wow.
that. So yeah, it takes effort, right?
It does. You got to set it up, and sometimes you need support. It sounds as if you and your husband really support each other around your individual dreams as well as your communal dream together
Yeah.
as a family, which
Yeah.
is beautiful. And it's one of the reasons I've trained all these advisors because people go in, they think it's about their 401k or it's about their tax return or about not getting taken advantage of. They walk into a financial advisor's office, they don't trust the financial advisor. Why should they? They see what, the banks and the insurance companies have done. in our culture, and they have healthy skepticism and cynicism. So, but if you can have an advisor who's honest, who has integrity, and who puts you first,
Hmm.
totally you. What's your dream? What's your dream of freedom?
Hmm.
Let's make it happen.
Hmm.
And listens with empathy. Wow. Well, then you've got some. It's like a coach.
Right.
It's like a coach.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
coach and a finance. That's really fantastic. All right, so I wanted to move on as we go through the third part of uh, of the conversation is to talk about um, innocence because so we're in the Pacific Northwest and in the world of Microsoft and Amazon, and there are people who have made millionaires when they're 20s,
Yeah.
30s, 20s, 40s. I mean, really, and 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 what's interesting is they literally have hit that goal. Where you're like, if you had one of the questions, if you had all the money in the world, what
Right.
would you do?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that I often find that people like there's if I were to look at the people that I worked with at Microsoft, a portion of them just continue working at Microsoft. A portion of them like left and did something completely wildly different, like
Yeah.
painting and
Right.
created a movie and
Yep.
produced music for like just
Yeah.
something that's wildly different. So it's going back to what you're saying. They were using the money as freedom to do the thing that they love and find other aspects of themselves that they didn't know. But I guess the question is, what are the innocent messages that the people who stayed, and I don't even know if they're staying and they're happy,
Mm.
or that they keep on working in some other job where they're a
Yeah.
kind of a serial startup. And I've always been curious because I didn't go down that path, and I'm always curious, like, what do you think are, and you've probably seen people like this, what are the messages that they receive when they're younger? You talk about the first stage of innocence, innocence and pain. What are the messages you receive, do you think?
Well, yeah. So the innocence and pain in childhood are the two ways that we get kind of trapped. And innocence has to do with our conceptual, how we conceive of things. So it's all brain stuff.
Hmm.
And pain has to do with feelings that get in the way in some way. So they, I mean, who's to say whether they're right or the person out in the woods is right?
Don't know.
Uh, and both of them, and either one of them could be acting on an innocent message. So the one in the woods could be so much of a hermit that he or she is rather angry and frustrated and doesn't like people and is constantly wrestling with the the sounds that are coming from civilization. And you just don't know. There are ways that we trap ourselves in our neuroses. So those messages about money, they can be wanting to hoard it all, or it can be I
Hmm.
want to spend it all, or I mean it can
Mm,
be opposite.
right.
And but not grounded in you're wanting to be the best person you can be and making money serve you. So
Mm,
that's the real thing. And so we get messages when we're kids.
mm,
My mother gave me a message of doing budgets. I think that was a useful message.
hmm.
I've used it periodically, but my dad had his message was the work ethic, and I wish that he'd given it to me in a way that was well connected, that was humane.
Mm,
But he pushed it like you've got to do this, you've got to do work,
hmm.
and I rejected it because it
Mm,
didn't feel right to me. So messages we take and we either grab them and say this is what I want, or no, we reject them.
right.
And
Either way, we either go one direction or the other. Those messages still have a profound effect on us.
exactly, they're still there. We're still holding on to them one way or
Right.
another. And
Yes.
and so the trick is to and it's a meditation trick. What do you do in meditation? What's the number one thing you do? Well, when a thought comes up, you let it go and you come
Mm,
back to your object of meditation. So all of those messages about money, they're just thoughts. And the more that we've let them go, the more we can be at ease
mm,
without getting hooked one direction or another around
hmm.
those thoughts. So that's really the dilemma. How do we let go of our attachment?
Right. Well, I thought I wanted to go into a little bit of depth into what I read in the book because I thought was interesting. So you have people who are, You were mentioned it already, overspending and hoarding. They don't relate. They're constantly buying stuff and not realizing. So I think in the book you talk about a couple that had like a $10,000 debt, and they kept on spending and spending and spending because in some ways I don't know what message they received in their childhood, but that was one of the outcomes that they had. And then there's this idea of choosing between money and integrity. So there was this one gentleman who was working hours and hours and subsequently got divorced, right? Where he was working because he had to be the provider, even to the point that it ruined his marriage with his wife or relationship and estranged him from his children because he wasn't around.
Yeah.
But I assume he had this message that was similar to the one that your dad gave and that my parents gave me. Like, you got to work, you got to work, you got to work, you got to make money. Don't be an artist. Don't be a whatever. Just work, work, work. That kind of thing. And then there's disempowerment about money, where you're in the book, you talk about a woman who was always, and I think it's really hard because as a woman, we get messages like, you're not good in math, you don't know about finances, let me do the taxes, you don't know what you're doing, my husband manages a checking account. So then you become disempowered. And then inability to attend to practical financial tasks, which are balancing your budget, making sure you have enough money in your account so you don't balance it, and investing on getting rich schemes, kind of those kind of things. So these are all the ones that you mentioned.
Right.
So are these kind of the main things that you saw when you were at that stage in your career doing financial planning? Are these kind of like the archetypes of, I
Yeah.
guess, of messages?
Yeah, I think they're all archetypes. I mean, in a way, we can relate to every one of them.
Yeah.
We can relate to both the hoarder and the spender. We want to be the spender, but then we feel guilty, and then we hoard, and so it's very complex and it gets very murky. So if you know that you're being driven, or if you have any inkling that you're being driven by some money game happening inside of you, and it is harming your relationship or it's robbing you. If you're not able to be who you really want to be now, then it's worth really thinking about these things
Mm-hmm.
and looking at how can I make that happen? And part of it is figuring out what are my money messages that are driving me
Mm-hmm.
and lessen their impact. Part of it's going to the feelings that you're holding, that you're in grief or you're anxious or you're frustrated, and learning to be more at ease in the midst of those feelings so they're not driving you either.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's worthwhile going and figuring out, who do you really want to be, and how does money work so that I can make that happen, so that it will work for delivering me into the world, the me that I really want to be.
Yeah. So you had a couple of exercises in your book that I then subsequently asked, like went through. And so it asked, like, talk about what you thought about money. And so, I used to babysit, and I babysat so I could make money. And then I worked all summer long so that I could make money. And then my mother used to actually sort, and during tax time, she took all of her checks and she sorted it, and it was this big ordeal.
Yes.
And both of them invested in stocks. I don't ever think I ever saw them budgeting anything. Like, I know that they had a budget, but I never saw like a budget that they would write up. I
Right.
never saw them balance checkbooks. I mean, I don't know, but so they seem to be somewhat financially mature, but honestly not hugely. And
Yeah.
then I actually, I interestingly, there was one moment where my mom, I wanted to travel. It was my junior year abroad. And I said, I'm going to go on junior year abroad, and then I'm going to travel for a month. And I'd like to bring this backpack, because at the time they had those backpacks that you could, backpack across Europe. And she's like, oh, no, that's a very unsuitable bag for a woman. You should actually have something, more feminine. And I was like, no, this is how I'm going to do it. And she's like, no, that's not how it's going to work. And if you choose to get that backpack, I'm not going to pay for any of your travel. And I said, fine. I'm choosing to get that backpack, and I have money in my bank account, and I will pay for all the travel.
Oh, good for you, CJ.
Yeah, and I still remember that day, because I think at that moment I was like, all right, you don't know me anymore.
Yeah.
You don't know me, my decisions, or what I do. anymore. And so
Mm,
for me, money did equal freedom from a very early age.
wow, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's weird. And my mom was someone who was an immigrant, and so as an immigrant, an immigrant when China was being taken over, kind of immigrant. So luckily they had money. They fled to Brazil and then U.S.
Mm,
subsequently, and they were pretty good about saving their money and investing. In fact,
yeah,
they're all really good. My family's been really good. They made most of their money through the stock market. Anyhow,
fabulous.
anyhow, so my that was my mom's genesis, and
Oh,
she basically, because she's an immigrant, there's this kind of like nervousness about money because when they were in
right.
China, like they had several houses and money and possessions taken away all the time. So this is kind of like there's this kind of nervousness about money when you're an immigrant, right? So I had that kind of growing up, and also the Chinese cultural piece for me was about money equals control. You follow what
Uh,
your parents say, and
yeah.
because we write the checkbooks. And so that was a moment where it changed. And then,
That had to be a huge moment. I forgot about the Chinese overlay. That's
yeah,
amazing.
so it was really huge. And then actually, when I think it was probably about 5 years ago, my mom
Oh,
said, "Here's we're doing. I'm writing my will, and I'm going to give all the money to you." And it's kind of, and there's just kind of like, and I don't know how much she's going to. I know it's a lot of money because she's
mm,
actually saved money and invested it so wisely that she took. She's literally millions of dollars or more. I mean, she has a lot of money. So she's
oh,
like, I'm going to give you this like colossal amount of money,
oh,
and I'm going to give it to your kids. I'm like, well, that's so generous. Thank you. But can you tell us? Because we want to know. We don't
yeah,
want to just give money to our kids because it could actually affect their future and how
yeah,
motivated they are to work. It could affect their whole life. So
yeah,
we need to know for our planning purpose. And she's like, I can't tell you. And I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I know this is an awful lot of money and I don't want to be obnoxious about it, but I don't want your money. You've been
yeah.
trying to control me with this money my entire life. I
Wow.
know it's a lot of money and my life can be different if I got this money,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I don't ever want to see it because when I come to see you, you feel like I'm seeing you because of your money. Not
right.
because and if I don't see you, there's just like I'm going to write you out of my will. I'm like, write me out of your will right now, so I don't have to have these conversations. I want you to
Yeah,
know that I'm coming to see you. When she's in her 80s because I love you. There's no money involved in this at all, and to have that be part of the equation feels just so
yeah.
ugly to me. So just take it out of the equation. Don't give me any money, and I don't want to see it. And I hope it doesn't make my kids upset, but make me feel good.
Well, it's a very powerful thing to do, and I think a very good thing. It sounds to me, once again, you're taking a stand that has to do with your own power, but also your authenticity and being able to kind of govern your world in the way you want to, rather than having these exogenous forces coming in and saying, "No, you've got to do it this way."
Yeah,
And so I think it's a very powerful statement. It's very similar to the backpack to me.
yeah,
And
it
I'm
is.
moved that you tell me the story. I had so many clients who came from inherited wealth and their parents had trust funds that kind of were strings attached. And sometimes, unlike your mother, sometimes it was sex and money. I mean, it was dark. It
What do you
was
mean? Like, so, like,
dark,
you mean,
meaning there'd been abuse in the family. And now the string continues with money. And it's like,
uh,
so it can be a very, very dark element in a lot of different ways.
mm,
What I tried to do with people, just since we're on the theme of inheritance, I would always try to do what you tried to do, which is find out how much and find out when and how. And if it was going to be coming in a way that could completely throw off your vision of what it is to be a good parent for your kids, that to run interference and basically
yeah,
say, I really don't want that, And this is, if you're going to do something with my kids, I'd like to be involved and I'd like to participate in thinking how it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's always your gift, but I'd like to, as parent, it makes sense. And then when they were able to do that, CJ, it was marvelous, just amazing, because their relationship with their parent got stronger. The feeling of the lineage was really strong, but it was relatively rare that they were able to do that whole piece. That would
Yeah.
be the most powerful and most mature thing of all, to
Yeah,
see
I
if you could do
tried.
that.
I said I really want to know all those things, and it was like I can't tell you, and it's none of your business. And I was like, okay, I
Right,
don't want it. And now I
right.
realize I don't want it for multiple reasons because,
Yeah,
like, you're trying to now control my children. No, thank you. Like, I don't want you to have this
right.
money controlling my kids. Not going to happen. But
Yeah.
it is interesting because it is a form of freedom. But it goes back to going back to the topic. It's about innocence, right? I mean, I received a message about money. Money equals compliance, right? That was how I received it. And it means compliance and control. And the next part you talk about is the pain, because there was so much pain that I had as a kid, just not knowing like it's basically conditional love with money,
Right.
which makes it even worse, honestly. But what are the other pain? Like there were several different, and I mentioned my own story because there's and there are several in the book about people controlling each other with money. But what are the other kind of pain-oriented things did you see?
Well, there are many, many things because pain really is about the dark feelings that we feel. And so there's shame and there's humiliation and there's guilt and there's jealousy and there's envy.
Mm,
And then there's fear and anger and frustration. And so all of those feelings can be sadness, depression, despair. All of those feelings can get hooked in with stories and
mm,
and you're just kind of in this mishmash.
mm,
And in my later work, and I do this a little bit in seven stages, it was really just beginning then. I I talk about something that I call the structure of suffering. And what it is a jumble of uncomfortable feelings or pain hooked to our stories, our opinions, our beliefs, our judgments. So it's all those innocent messages.
mm,
And the hook is me. It's I, me, and mine.
mm,
It's that, oh, I'm like this, or how dare you do this to me? And then you're all hooked. So there's
mm,
a meditative response that I've taught for many years, which is it's very simple. It's a very simple mantra. You let your thoughts go and you let your feelings be. And so what we do in a lot of the Buddhist teaching, the mindfulness teaching that I do, is I train people to feel their anger without attachment, to feel their guilt without getting lost in it, to feel their fear without being shaken by it.
mm,
And they're very powerful practices to actually
mm,
learn to
mm.
feel those without getting hooked.
Interesting. That's a really powerful way of using mindfulness in a completely unexpected way. But what I'm hearing is that, if money then gets hooked, it's a trigger. Money becomes a trigger for meaning a whole bunch of things. Money
Yeah,
is just a form of exchange of, it's like, like you said, it's just like I pay you, you pay, it's like a form of exchange. But
yeah,
now we've hooked all these other things onto what money means, right? So when something happens, about money, there's like all these other, it's all a pile up of emotions and feelings and
that's right.
messages that kind of got bundled in together in this
Yeah,
like really tight, compressed knot. And so I can see how mindfulness is just like letting it go to get to the point where you just see money as money,
yeah,
not money as like how much you're loved, how
yeah.
good you're being, how productive you are. But like that, I mean, if I look at some of these things, right? Money is all those things. Like money equals all these things, right? How important you are, productive, important, all these different things that if you have those hooks could be really hard, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So money legitimately is you can look to the past and look to the future around money. Money, the money that you have is money that has potential uses in the future. So it can deliver freedom to you. Money looking back at the past, how did you get that money? Yeah, did you inherit it? Did you earn it? Did you save for it? Did you luck out and win the lottery? And so there's a story there. But in both, whether you're looking in the past or looking in the future, if you're attached and you're clinging to it in some way, that's where the trigger is,
Right.
and and that's where you're going to be dysfunctional with your friends, with your partner, with your kids, with your parents, with the world.
Mm. Yeah, so I think it's just being conscious. So for me, because I had this immigrant background, if I were to talk about my personal attachment, just so that people get clear with what this would look like, I'm attached to money because at any point it could be gone and I'm not going to be safe. And so I'm like thinking money equals safety, money equals safety. And so it does in some level, but there's this kind of compulsive um, attachment, meaning like if I don't have money, then, what does that mean about me? I'm unsafe, right? So it's basically working, using your meditation, and like going down with the fear, letting go of the emotions. And what was the other part? What was the upward
Well, it's
part?
letting the thoughts go, but letting the feelings be. So finding a way to be at ease, even though the body feels kind of agitated with anxiety or fear. Just learning that that's just sensation. You can meditate on it.
Mm,
You
mm,
can't meditate on a thought because the thought goes like this, it disappears.
yeah,
Whereas feelings are kind of there. You can watch them. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that.
yeah,
But if you hook them to feelings, if you hook them to thoughts and you identify with them, you're in trouble.
yeah.
Stuck.
Yes, I hear you. Well, this has been wonderful. We talked about some of the stuff. There's still even more that I want to talk to you about your book,
Oh,
and you have two other books. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
no.
We've been talking to George Kinder, excuse me, about his book, Seven Stages of Money Maturity, Understanding the Spirit and Value of Money in Your Life. And tell me a little bit about how people can connect with you if they want to do future work with you or attend some of your seminars or work with one of the 3,000 accountants that are trained in this method.
So it's a financial planning network, and you can find a lot of it out just by going to kinderinstitute.com. So that's probably the first and main thing. You can do life planning on yourself using we've got a free consumer website
Oh, great.
called that. Yeah, that's useful, and you play all the life planning games and learn about yourself, and then deliver your life plan. And it's called lifeplanningforyou.com. Life planning for you, FORU.com, YOU.com. And then the third one is the one that I'm working on right now, which is working to create a golden civilization right now on the earth. End war, heal the planet, create democracy everywhere, make everybody free. And that's called agoldencivilization.com. And it also is a movement that's now on five. I think it's on five continents right now. So we're
Wow.
moving on that one too.
That's
So
so exciting. I am definitely going to have you back to talk about the golden
that'd be
civilization. It
wonderful.
sounds fascinating. So you have you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
You've got the Kinder Institute. You've got life planning. So the life planning for you, you have so many wonderful exercises in your book. We have in your book. Is that are those online
Yeah.
versions of those?
Yes, almost all of those, and then a few others are online.
Oh, excellent. Okay, that's fantastic. I highly recommend. I actually did one of those exercises and was shocked because I hadn't thought. I mean, you have this one of the exercises I just will show people briefly is looking at. So I'm a life coach, right? So I
Oh
think
yeah,
about like the various segments of your life and think
yeah.
about what your goals are. But I've never thought to do it 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years life. I was like, okay, this is when you got a finance guy
Yeah,
with a
right.
spreadsheet.
Yeah,
This is what
that's it.
happens. But you
That's
know
it.
what? It was very interesting to think about because in coaching is very a temporal thing. It's like, what do you want right now? And you look at it, what do you want right now? And the now is whenever the now is, and so it's different. You don't look 20 years out. And So I love that.
Right.
I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, like I need to do this exercise. I'm very curious what this exercise, and here's another one that I love for people, just as a plug for life planning for you. There's got to have things that you got to have, got to do, and got to be things that you should have, should do, should be, and like to. And I thought, that's great too. These are just great coaching tools. I'm going to have to steal them, or I can just direct people to go to your
Yeah.
website.
You're one.
So this is just beautiful work. Thank you again for being here.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, CJ.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll cut right there. Okay, good. This is great. So I'll have you. I know your admin was asking me like, let's actually plan another. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be doing. One of my dreams for the last 5 years is doing the Camino de Santiago, which
Oh,
I'm going to be
great.
doing in September. And so I haven't really known. I'm still
Yeah.
planning out travel because I
Oh,
have
yeah.
one kid flying it. We're dropping my youngest son off to college. He'll
Hey.
be empty nester. So I don't know what my August and September looks like, but
Yes.
once I know, I'll be able to book it. But until I
Yeah.
book the tickets, I won't know. So please
So that's,
apologize to her. It wasn't
don't worry
anything.
about it. And
Don't
my
take it personally. I just couldn't
schedule
figure it out.
is very complex as well. I'm traveling to 4 Asian cities. I'm doing
Oh, great.
2 cities in Europe. I'm doing a major 2 week development just in one city in America, St. Louis of all cities. Is
Wow.
calling me out for a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to be very busy too, but we'll work it out. We'll find a
It's
time.
fantastic. I
Uh,
really love your work and your mission. It's my
mm,
mission too, to free people in a different kind of way. But it's
absolutely.
like if I want to free them with information. If you kind of if you're like when you go to my radio show, there's all sorts of stuff where people can listen to a show and literally help themselves, hopefully, to get out of whatever
Yeah.
with the books and everything.
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
thank you, and I'll schedule something, but it probably won't. I don't know even when it will be. So it sounds
Don't
like you're
worry.
going to be traveling, but I'll work it out with the person
Don't
who
worry
books
about
your
with
calendar.
Laura. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you,
Yeah, nice
CJ.
meeting you too. That was
All
very
right.
lovely. Thank you. Bye
Have a
bye.
great summer. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for this.
Bye.
Yep. Bye bye.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.